Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. We're in December 14th today, and this is part two. I don't know if you watched part one, so some of the questions I answered in part one, and some of the questions I'll answer in part two, just because I couldn't get all the questions in, and I really do want to answer most, if not all, the questions I have, depending on the time. Before I start, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. If you have subscribed to this channel, please double check because YouTube is having a lot of trouble right now with subscribers, and people are getting unsubscribed kind of like automatically. So just if you haven't subscribed, or if you have subscribed rather, please double check that you are still subscribed. That's just a short side note. So next question I have, and this is kind of dealing with the part one where I was telling the story of my OCD, is the person's asking, Ali, when in your progress did you start to have free moments of OCD while alone? And I think that you start to have them pretty much, not right away, but very early on, when you start to continuously hit about 80 or 90% level of refusing reassurance. So if 80-90% of the time you're refusing reassurance, and then the rest of it you're kind of giving in because we're all human, it's tough sometimes. It's too tough, right? As soon as I started to do that, I think within a week or two, not even two, like within the week, I started to see like, oh, you know what? For the last hour, I didn't think about it. Like it was really, because my OCD was, I mean, like guys, people think that sometimes that like, oh, my OCD was probably mild and that's why I recovered. Like I couldn't leave the house, you know, like seriously, I couldn't do anything. It was really, really bad. Like even classifying it as 10 out of 10, kind of difficult for me because it was not 10 out of 10. It was like 20 out of 10. You know how it feels when your OCD is at its worst, It feels like it's not even that it takes over your life. You don't even have a life anymore, you're just consumed, you know? And when you go from that and you have a point of, oh, I didn't have OCD for an hour. I didn't have the thoughts. I was smiling. I was having fun with my friends, or, well, I wasn't really having fun with my friends because at that point I had no friends that, were actually like coming over or anything like that. But, I was just busy and I just didn't think of it, and it was like nice, but almost like shocking, but it starts very, very quickly because your brain doesn't keep irrelevant information. It only keeps information that you're making your brain keep, So if you are choosing to disregard the thoughts, telling your brain that it's irrelevant, your brain's going to say like, okay, it's irrelevant. It's not going to drop it completely that second, but it will start to give you some breathing room. So pretty much right away. So another question, I have a lot of questions today about my recovery. I haven't really had that in the last few weeks. It's pretty interesting. The person asks, can you tell us about your recovery? I just did. I think it would be nice to hear some positive story. I mean, do you still get urges? Do you feel like one has to be a more disciplined human to keep OCD at bay? And like always, thank you for being so forceful against OCD. Well, you are very welcome. You have to be forceful against OCD. In terms of being a more disciplined human being to keep OCD at bay, I am not a very disciplined human being. I can tell you that right now. I do things more on the spur than on a plan, and it's something that I'm working on, but it's not going too well, to be honest with you. It's not my personality. So I think it helps, but I don't think you really need to be in order to recover. You just have to be disciplined about disregarding a thought specifically, not about your entire life. But you do have to, it's not so much discipline, you just have to be focused that until you recover from OCD, every other area of your life is going to suffer. So if your focus is going towards your job, your friends, your relationships, your anything else, your hobbies, or probably not hobbies at this point, right? But your situations in life, whatever they may be, all those are already suffering because you have OCD. So instead of putting focus elsewhere, try to center your focus on OCD recovery. And really, what I mean by that is refocusing on those other things, but at the same time, not paying attention to OCD. So you're still focusing on your relationships, on your things, on your hobbies or whatever, but you're not giving OCD any power, and that is always your focus every single day. Like, you wake up, your main job right now is to not give OCD any power. It's not your actual real job. It's not your responsibility. It's to not give OCD any power and to focus on your real job. It's kind of like a paradox. So I hope it makes sense to you. But it's being in, and just like you say, right? Like, being very forceful in, my main job right now is to recover. In order to recover, I need to stop focusing on OCD and start focusing on my real life. So that's what I'm doing. But every time I get an OCD thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to be very focused that I refuse the OCD thought, that I'm not giving it attention, that I'm not giving validity to it. And then I'm going to focus back on the things that, are real things. Like, when I mean drop everything, I don't mean drop everything for OCD thought. I mean, really make sure that you're not reacting. Because sometimes we get caught up in things and it's almost easier to react, because you're worried about doing something else or whatever, But instead saying, nope, I'm not dealing with OCD. I'm not going to avoid because it's easier. I'm not going to reassure myself because it's easier. I'm going to refuse. I'm going to have anxiety when I refuse, but I'm still going to refuse to play the game anymore, And I don't know if this would be called disciplined, but it's just, guys, like, honestly, there's no other way out of it, And this is what I learned in my recovery, that there's no other way out, It's just disregarding. That's the only way out. And it's the hardest way, but like I said, you will start to see these glimpses, like in the previous question, right? You will start to see these glimpses of, oh, I didn't have OCD. I felt normal. I felt fine for an hour, or I felt fine for a few hours, And as you continue to recover, you will see these glimpses more and more. So the next question I have, I already kind of answered. Is it normal for normal daily objects and situations to trigger OCD? So, for example, seeing a chair triggers thoughts. Yeah, of course it's normal, because your brain will connect anything it can possibly connect to OCD. It will connect to OCD. So it's totally normal. You just have to look at it as exposure. That the more exposures you have, as long as you do exposure and response prevention. So you're exposed, you're not playing the game, you're preventing the response, right? As long as you do that, that's actually good for your recovery, because it gives you practice. And the more times you refuse, the faster your brain will adjust. So it's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if you pay attention every time, then you're digging yourself deeper in. So the next question I have is, I feel like unless I punish myself for the thoughts and anything I do that increases the thoughts, and unless I pay all my dues, maybe the thoughts will go. I just do these and these and they'll leave you, or at least you'll be more strong because you're paying in some way, at least a little. Also, sometimes I say the thoughts out loud and that feels even more worse and it needs more punishment. What to do? The more you're right now, you are really doing what OCD wants you to do. You're playing the game entirely. So OCD is telling you to do something, you're doing it. OCD tells you to do something else, you're doing it. That gets you deeper into this make-believe world. You have to get out of it. So OCD says that unless you punish yourself, all that, I'm not going to punish myself. Whatever, for having a thought, for getting a thought, forget about it. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm done with that game. And that's when your recovery starts. When you start to react like that, that's when your recovery starts. As long as you keep playing into OCD and doing what OCD wants you to do with this punishment stuff, you're just going to keep going around and around, So just saying, no more, I'm done. This is not working. I'm getting worse and worse. I'm going to stop now, And that's when the recovery starts. So next question I have is, hi Ali, I used to think of my thoughts, thinking one suspicious thought and another and another and another about someone. I don't know if you would call this rumination. I would think about suspicious thoughts and how the suspicious thoughts would come, and now the suspicious thoughts would come to me automatically. They are repetitive thoughts. The suspicious thoughts I used to think about are repetitive and automatic, and I also get new thoughts as well. um, yeah, this is, the thought coming to you is exposure. What you're supposed to be doing is prevent the response. So, like, for example, right? What if something, 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 right? You have two choices here. You can say, oh my God, yeah, let me try to figure it out, Or you can say, nah, that's pretty silly. I'm just going to let that go. So choosing to do the letting go and not the trying to figure out, not playing into the OCD game, right? But yeah, this is very typical OCD. So next question is, hi Ali, I struggle with the thoughts that I may have killed somebody at a place where I had been, and some of the compulsions include mental checking and going to the place to check whether anything had happened. I feel scared and alone. You have to stop doing that. You have to stop reacting as if something happened. Because the more you react, the worse you're going to feel. Like I said, millions of people feel this way. It's it always feels real. It's always false, but you will continue to feel scared and alone until you take that leap of faith and refuse these behaviors. Until you refuse these behaviors, nothing is going to happen. You have to refuse reassurance, and this is reassurance. No more checking, no more going back, no more trying to figure it out. You're done with that. That topic is off limits to you. When you start treating it like that, then you will for sure recover. But you have to do the work. So another similar questions I have, I find that, guys, like generally speaking, I don't know what it is, but I find that a lot of the times in questions on YouTube, as well as with clients, I get a lot of the same questions in the course of a day, or in the course of like short time period. And then they'll never get them again, and then they'll get them. It's kind of weird. I don't know what it has to do with. Maybe it's how I'm wording things in that particular day, or But I have another question of: is it possible for someone to trigger your puro thoughts? Meaning, if they say something that all of a sudden triggers them. And this is the same thing as I answered in a few previous questions. That yeah, you can get triggered by anything. Like watching news, watching TV. Somebody says something, and it can trigger any kind of OCD, puro or regular. So next question I have is, the person writes, I think medication makes it easier to do the work and techniques that you explain in your videos. For me at least, I think it does. And I've had OCD for years, and it's the only thing I've found that takes the edge off the anxiety. But I do believe it's a very personal thing. What works for one person may not work for another. And if one chooses to go the med route, they may have to try a few different types before they find the right one. I tried a few before I was settling on, I'm not going to name the name, but that's the one she settled on, and have had very little side effects from it. And the few side effects I have had, I can put up with for the sake of lower and more bearable anxiety. And I agree with this. I think that as long as you are putting your effort on recovery in terms of disregarding the thoughts, handling the thoughts correctly, rewiring how your brain is, um, temporarily using medication to lower the anxiety to allow you to better do that is not bad in any way. It's only bad if the person starts to think of medication as a permanent thing and as their only recovery solution. Then it's bad. But if you're using it only as a tool and only for a temporary period of time, then it should be okay. So yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you're saying here. So next question I have is, hello, I spend all of my day with too many voices in my head, like meaning like OCD thoughts coming in. But I don't know what I'm doubting, and I can't remember what I've been thinking throughout the day. When you have OCD that's 10 out of 10, it's like, it's just, your mind is just overworked and your thoughts are just everywhere. You just need to start doing the work. You just need to start disregarding. And it's normal for people who are, at very severe levels of OCD, especially like pure O, where you're constantly thinking and trying to figure it out, to feel very tired, to feel like you need a nap always and all of that, because your brain is working double time to trying to process OCD thoughts and rumination and all of that, as well as real thoughts. So it becomes like this, like, just mush in your mind, right? That you can't really figure out what's what anymore. You're confused, you're disoriented, all of that. So it's just pushing past it and just doing the work and just saying, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to try to solve it anymore. I'm not going to try to figure it out anymore. And then all of this will kind of normalize itself. You don't need to do anything more than that. Everything else, the body functions will take care of that. But until you start disregarding, nothing's going to happen. So next question I have is, hi Ali, please give me some perspective on SOCD. Um, I think for what the person means by SO is sexual orientation OCD. It will be helpful. Also, what approach should I be adopting to deal with it? Like other OCD themes, the content and compulsion of checking and rechecking one's thought, urges, associations are frightening. The whole experience of suddenly questioning one's own sexual identity is debilitating, pushing further in a misery cocoon. Thank you. So with this, just like with any other form of OCD, that the more you find yourself trying to figure out your sexual identity, right? Like whether you're gay or straight, the more you will feel like, well, what if? Well, and like this is an extremely common OCD. But this checking is not different from any other type of checking. So say if you have like, I don't know, HIV OCD and you're going to the doctor and you're getting all these tests, right? It's the same thing. You're just testing mentally yourself, right? You're trying to figure out, well, am I gay? Am I straight? What if I'm gay? Then all of this is gonna come crumbling down, and because usually this is what people are worried about with, like you say, SOCD, or they call it also HOCD, like homosexual OCD. That the more they're worried that if they are gay, then like the consequences of that, like their family will not like them, or that something bad is going to happen, or whatever, like in whatever way, right? So it's just not reacting to these thoughts. If you're worried about being gay, like people who are gay, they're not worried about being gay. They're not, they may still get OCD, but they will not get OCD about being gay. They'll get some other type of OCD. Do you know what I mean? People don't get OCD on the topics that are actually true. So by you getting a thought that, what if I'm gay? That, first of all, that's a very normal OCD thought, very kind of standard OCD thought. Not to give you reassurance, but you have to get past it and refuse the reaction, because it's not about being gay. It's that you're reacting to an OCD thought, and the OCD thought keeps going. It can go both ways. Gay people can worry about being straight people can worry about being gay. Religious people can be worried about, what if I do something against God. People who are very sensitive can worry, what if I killed somebody, or what if I done something wrong to somebody. It's all the same thing, but it's the reaction that keeps this thought going. So the exposure, because people ask me about like exposures for gay OCD, right? Or homosexual, whatever, however you want to word it, right? And the exposure is the thought itself. So you getting that thought of, what if I'm gay, for example, right? I just don't want to offend anybody with like terminology and whatever. But if you're getting a thought, well, what if I'm gay? That's the exposure. But now you need to prevent the response of fear. So not dealing with it, not reacting. This is my regular OCD thoughts. I'm not giving it any attention. That should be your response. That's the exposure and response prevention that we're talking about for these kinds of thoughts. The more you do this, the less they will start coming in. So the next bunch of questions I'm going to answer are coming from my email. So if you answered a question through email, if I don't answer it right now, like if I miss it somehow, because it's a lot harder to go through the questions, because I get a lot of emails. Really, it's better if you ask on YouTube, because if you ask in the email, sometimes I miss them just by accident. So if I don't get to yours, please resend, because I do want to get to all of them. So the person is asking about the compulsions, and saying that, it's just a longer paragraph, so I'm kind of paraphrasing, but basically saying that sometimes if you don't do the compulsion, like if you don't check, then your whole day is ruined, and you lose confidence, and you lose self-pride, and so on, and you just feel very distressful when you refuse. And what is my advice to that? And honestly, that as long as you keep doing compulsions, you're going to keep being in OCD. So your choice is, you can do say for example, you get a thought in the morning, you can do a compulsion, right? And you might be fine for a certain amount of time, maybe, and then you'll get another thought, and then you'll have to do another compulsion, and you'll live the rest of the day like that, and then the next day, the new day will start, and it'll be the same thing. And you might feel a little more comfortable, not really much more, because you're still getting the urge to do compulsion, so you're still distressed, but a little less distressed, right, than if you refuse flat out. But you will have it for, I don't want to kind of scare you, but you might have it for the rest of your life. Or you struggle, you have extreme anxiety at first while you're refusing, but you still choose to refuse. You will lose confidence. You maybe will feel like how you're saying, like, I'll lose self-pride, I'll lose confidence, but you will recover from OCD and you will not have OCD anymore. So it's in order to recover, you need to do the work, and the work is unfortunately very hard, very distressful, very difficult, will give you lots of anxiety, and for the first while really kind of ruin your day, as you say, right? That you will feel all day like you should be checking, you should be doing compulsions and all of that. But what you get back is the rest of your life, So it is a worthy investment and a worthy fight. You know what I mean? So you have to go through it. You just have to, if you want to recover. So next question I have, hi Ali, do you recommend planned exposures for physical compulsions, such as rituals? If yes, can you talk about some and explain how we should be doing the exposures? Yeah, if your OCD is more on like a physical level, right, where you're, say, you have to do something a certain number of times, or you find certain color unacceptable, like you can't wear a certain color, you can't have a certain color around, then doing the opposite of that. So say, for example, I don't like the color, say, red. It reminds me of blood. I'm not going to have red anywhere near me. That may have been your life up to now. So now you're going to say, from this moment on, I'm going to just I'm going to cover myself in red. I will feel extremely uncomfortable for the first while, but after a while it'll become normal and it's not a big deal, because it's not a big deal to begin with. It just feels like a big deal because you have OCD about it, So, but it really depends on the type of OCD you have. Or say, for a religious OCD, I have to pray the right way or something bad is going to happen, right? So, okay, I'm going to choose to pray the wrong way, and nothing is going to happen because like for religious OCD, the person usually thinks, well, I'm going against God if I'm doing a certain way. Well, God already sees what you're doing, without you telling God, right? Like that's kind of the overall, in most religions, that's how it is, right? That the God already knows your thoughts. They're already, like he, she, whatever, it already knows your intentions, right? So you don't need to prove anything. So you don't need to pray the right way. You don't need to wear a certain color. You don't need to avoid certain numbers. You don't need to do any of these things. OCD is telling you to do them, so you do the opposite. And you will see that it will start to lift. And if you're doing it in a planned way, meaning that instead of waiting for the exposure to kind of like for you to have an opportunity of exposure, like say, like you see something red, like in my example, right? Rather than, no, today I purposely will put on a red shirt, or today I purposely will drive by a certain place I don't normally drive by, or something like that. You know what I mean? Doing it on purpose like that speeds up the process, because the more practice you have, the more chances you have to show your mind that this is just OCD. So this is the end of the show. If I haven't answered your question, if it got lost somewhere in the massive amount of email that I'm getting, please ask again and I will answer it on the next show. But please label it as questions for the show so I can clearly see it and kind of filter through it if you're sending it in email. I do prefer to get it in YouTube just because it's much easier for me to reply that way. So thank you guys for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you haven't checked out youhaveocd.com, please check that out. There's a private recovery there with one-on-one talking with me. There's also ebooks, there's articles, there's a lot of information on OCD recovery. So please take a look. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.